Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Friends, colleagues, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, Sat Sri Akal, Namaste. Thank you for being with us this morning. I'm actually quite impressed at the number of people that are here this early in the morning. I was told it was a graveyard shift, but I think we've done pretty well, to be honest. It's 70% almost. The format today is Lisa Grande will kick off after me. I'll be brief. Lisa is very generous. She had 20 minutes, but she reckons she's going to do about 10, which is unheard of in any forum I've been. So I'll enjoy watching that. Then the other participants will 5 to 8 minutes just speak on the issue. Then we're going to get into a little bit of a discussion, and then I'm hoping that we'll have an opportunity for some questions and answers. Just obviously want to start by thanking the government, in particular His Highness Sheikh Mohammed and Sheikh Abdullah, and of course the spiritual and quite often physical architect of all this, which is Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya, who has been for me an inspirational figure for the last 15 years or so perhaps, and that inspiration has not dimmed. You know, we live in an increasingly interdependent and interconnected world where something that happens thousands of miles away in Asia or Africa or the Middle East or Australasia can impact on each and every one of us irrespective of where we physically live. Issues such as climate change, resource scarcity, disease, human conflict, extremism, terrorism, they don't respect local, national or international boundaries. These are collective problems, collective challenges, and so we must take collective responsibility in order to find collective solutions and overcome them. And in a small and humble way, I think this is indeed what we're attempting to grapple with here in Abu Dhabi this week. The title has been read out. It doesn't roll off the tongue so easily, but within there is encapsulated many of the challenges that we have in our world today. On conflicts, we know how complex they are and how they can actually be far beyond the country where the actual physical destruction is taking place. Examples, obviously, Ukraine springs to mind, Syria, Libya, the list goes on. In terms of novel security challenges, obviously technology is one aspect that can play a huge role, both in terms of defence, hacking, financial, espionage, IPs, etc. And finally, collaborative. The UN, for many, without serious reform, perhaps is not fit for purpose. However, without it, I have no doubt that we'd be in a far worse position than we currently are. And finally, just to say that in many ways, this is about learning for prevention. And the real challenge is not if we can learn, but whether we will choose to. They say where there's a will, there's a way, and if it's not happening, then the will simply isn't strong enough. I'm going to just briefly introduce these and the United States Institute for Peace, which is a unique-ish organisation in the US in the sense that it's funded by the federal government, it's non-partisan, and it has some very laudable ambitions and mission to prevent, mitigate and resolve violent conflict around the world. Just to say of these, for those who don't know, she's been working in some of the toughest terrain for the last 25 years or so. that you can imagine. And I know that she was in South Sudan during the period that it was actually born. For many, it was the most dangerous place in the world at the time. And many others, but I will say nothing further, but ask her to come and speak. And I've got to say that she's got record of not just talking the talk, but also walking the walk. And if she'd walk over here now, it'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, Your Graces, Your Honors, colleagues, it's a privilege to have been asked to provide framing comments for today's discussion on global conflicts and novel security challenges, and an honor to represent the United States Institute of Peace, which was established by the U.S. Congress in 1984 as a national, nonpartisan public institution dedicated to working with partners around the world to help prevent, mitigate, and resolve violent conflict abroad. The United States Institute of Peace is the most important public institution in the U.S. that's dedicated to pursuing peace. It was founded by faith organizations and U.S. veterans and is guided by the values of human dignity, cooperation, and dialogue as the best ways to promote understanding and common purpose. USIP, as it is known, proudly advances international religious freedom as a foundational pillar of global peace and security. The Institute has more than 300 peace prevention and peace-building programs in more than 90 countries around the world and offices in 19. During my comments this morning, I'd like to do two things. First, reflect on the dynamics and factors that are likely to drive conflict and insecurity in the next quarter century. And second, to reflect on the implications of these dynamics for the work we do to build peace. Starting with the factors driving conflict, there are three I'd like to highlight. The first is the impact the great power rivalry is and will have on creating conflict as China and Russia seek to enhance their status as major powers alongside the United States. This rivalry could take the form of conflict in regions and countries where the US, China, and Russia are attempting to expand their cultural, economic, military, and political influence. Or perhaps less likely, it could take the form of direct conflict between the powers themselves in very sensitive areas, for example, the Taiwan Strait. A second key driver of global instability and conflict is the spread of authoritarianism, the spread of new and existing extremist forces, and the ongoing threats posed by extremist movements and criminal networks. The threats posed by these forces are particularly acute in countries where the institutional mechanisms for reducing violence, for addressing popular grievances, and for managing tensions are not working effectively. The third key driver of instability and conflict are the disruptive global shocks that are and will continue to occur because of climate change, resource scarcity, and pandemics. Already, we are seeing new risks to global stability and security as countries struggle to deal with climate disasters and recover from COVID, and as major and emerging powers exploit new global inequities created by climate change, created by the pandemic, and by technological differences. In addition to these three drivers of conflict, there are other profound changes underway that will significantly impact how we build peace. Of these many changes, there are 4 which are particularly significant. First is the reality of global power. For the first time in 80 years, we are no longer in a unipolar or bipolar world where 1 or 2 countries exercise disproportionate influence and power. We are now in a multipolar world where multiple centers of military, political, cultural, moral, social, and economic power prevail. Second is the capacity of our existing institutional multilateral mechanisms to properly assess, mitigate, and respond to the factors that are driving conflict. It is not clear, and we should not assume, that the multilateral institutions we rely on to prevent and resolve conflicts are able now to mitigate great power rivalry, or rein in authoritarian regimes, or degrade terrorist capabilities, or control mass migration, or adapt to water scarcity and deforestation, the very things that threaten our joint existence on this planet. We have only to look at the wars in Ethiopia and Ukraine for proof of this. Third is the undermining of the rules-based international order, which the states and nations of the world constructed after the Second World War. This order continues to shape virtually all forms of international cooperation and partnership, and has been key to the enormous global advances in prosperity that have characterized our age. This order now, however, is under increasing pressure from the rebalancing of global power currently underway. Fourth is the way technology is changing the exercise of power. Digital technology is truly empowering individuals in unprecedented ways, but at the same time, it is also being used to create new forms of authoritarian repression. The new cyber technologies and weapons, almost none of which are regulated under international convention or treaties, are capable of causing mass disruption to the normal balanced functioning of societies, and if used during conflict, causing destruction on an unimaginable scale. It is profoundly worrying that multiple non-state actors have access to these weapons and are likely to use them without sanction or restraint. The pressing question for all of us who build peace as we enter this new age of conflict and instability is how we should engage with each other in partnership so that we can, as a community, help to chart a clear course and path to peace, prosperity, and stability. I hope you will allow us to share 3 possibilities. The first is a mediator partnership. This would involve establishing an interfaith group of mediators who know each other well and can be immediately deployed to areas where conflict is likely or has already erupted. We're already seeing something like this in Ukraine, where the Orthodox Church of Ukraine and the recently formed Ukrainian Orthodox Church, sometimes referred to as the Moscow Patriarch, have been facilitating dialogues across Ukraine and Russia. A forum like the Abu Dhabi Forum is a perfect place to help establish and facilitate this kind of interfaith group of mediators. The second idea builds on the work that has been done in the past 9 years by this forum to build an international interfaith alliance of peace leaders, facilitated by His Excellency Sheikh bin Bayat, an alliance that engages with the multilateral institutions that are dedicated to peace. As you may already be aware, there are currently more than 125 55 different multilateral institutions and instruments in the world that are dedicated to preventing and resolving peace. These include international trade institutions that help to mitigate economic inequality, arms control treaties that limit the use of the weapons of mass destruction, UN agencies that deliver humanitarian help control mass migration, and negotiate peace agreements. It also includes international courts of justice that sanction and punish violators of human rights and the perpetrators of mass atrocities. Many of these institutions were created at a different time to address a different set of global problems. The task in front of us now is to assess which of these institutions is working well, which need to be adapted, and which new ones, like the Marrakesh Declaration, are needed. One of the truly important, unique roles that an international interfaith alliance plays is to develop an archaeology of knowledge of peace institutions, as His Excellency Sheikh bin Baya guided us to do in his 2018 framing speech for this forum. This archaeology could involve the International Interfaith Alliance in assessing and guiding our global institutions of peace on how to deepen and implement their commitment to the universal values of virtue, unity of species, equality and human dignity, cultivation of commonalities, and rejection of differentiation. The third aspect of partnership involves reaching out and enjoining with youth and community networks and groups all over the world, in every region and place where conflict threatens prosperity, goodwill, and stability. The International Interfaith Alliance being built through this forum can play a central role in mentoring, engagement, training, and celebration with the networks and groups dedicated to peace and noble human values. I hope you will allow me to end with a personal reflection. Before joining the United States Institute for Peace, I worked for the United Nations for 25 years. I served in 12 wars across the world, either directly on the front line or as a leader of international assistance to provide aid, cease hostilities, and protect civilians. There were many things about war that I never understood and never will. But there is one thing that is clear to anyone who has seen war and to all people of faith. There is no higher goal for humankind than ending conflict, securing peace despite the obstacles and difficulties, protecting and nurturing that peace, and then gifting it to the next generation. I would like to thank and express our deep debt of gratitude to the United Arab Emirates for their hospitality in hosting us, and to His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya for presiding over our discussions. Thank you.
Thank you for that enlightening insight, Liz. The next speaker is Lord Walby, who's well known to the forum, a friend of the forum. John was a member of Parliament for 9 years, now a member of the House of Lords. Independent advisor on political violence and destruction, and also the UK Prime Minister's envoy on trade to Tanzania. And if any of that's wrong, I'm sure he's going to correct me in a moment. John has many years of experience at the highest levels in British politics, and we worked together when he was the advisor to Gordon Brown and indeed John Hutton as well. He's played a significant role in countering violent extremism and focusing on ISIS as well. Almost a perfect CV until you find out that he supports Sheffield Wednesday Football Club. But nobody's perfect. John, without further ado, we'll welcome you up here to say a few words. Well, I mean, if you're more comfortable there, that's okay as well?
I'll say.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks so much, Eddie. And it's great to see the leadership role that you are playing in Forum, given how much such a contribution to public life that you gave them on and still are. Now, it's a huge pleasure to be here. It's an honour to participate. Lisa, I have to say, you gave such, and you spoke with such eloquence and authority that I'm partly tempted just to say I agree with you entirely and leave it at that. But given how kind the hospitality has been in bringing me over here, let me just add a few reflections onto what you said so powerfully on the conflicts that we face. Let me just think a little more about the role of faith within those conflicts, which you set out importantly at the end, the role of faith in mitigating conflict, in bringing us forward, in giving a response to the challenges that we so obviously face across the world. And let me say that the leadership of Shakespeare Bayer in bringing us all here and presenting that alternative pathway, rejecting violence in the Muslim world and bringing faith together so powerfully, particularly this week in you so generously hosting the British Chief Rabbi. Is such an important alternative path to the different ways that are being presented for the world by, as you say, the conflict in Ukraine, from Russia's war in Ukraine, and also the security challenge to the world of China. And if you think about the ways in which faith is being misused and oppressed within those conflicts, I think it sets even more starkly the power and the importance of what Peace Forum is doing and the alternative that you give. You have that vision of the past in many ways in what Russia is doing in Ukraine, the complete abrogation of the laws that are there to govern peaceful coexistence between the states, but the mismanagement of the twisting and misrepresentation of religion within that conflict gives that sense of where religion can be misused to justify violence and conquest and the abrogation of the international rule of law, which is so important in binding us together. And then with China, you see not the past, but an alternative future, unless we can all work together to present a different and more powerful vision. You have a future where potentially the rule of law is not respected in the way that we know that it must be, but also that the expression of faith And you're seeing that in China's treatment of people right now. And I think it is very important that the international community does not falsely, wrongly, naively believe that can be an internalized version of what we do, and that it would not affect faith across the rest of the world as China's power grows. And so the tolerance and the respect and the mutual coexistence and the rejection of violence, which is led by His Excellency Sheikh Zayed over so many years, and which the Forum continues to champion, is so fundamentally important as a challenge to those profoundly destabilizing currents. And I think it is incumbent on all governments who do not want to go down those roads to continue to consider fully the role of faith and supporting faith as a counter and as a foundation to the stable, peaceful and respectful world that we want to build in those being challenged.
Thank you, John. I'm now going to, so I'm getting comfortable as well, so I'll steady as well. Now to introduce veteran journalist and political analyst, and veteran not in terms of age, but in terms of the quality of experience that he's acquired over many, many years. A hugely respected figure in the Arab world and beyond. A man with great capacity to write. In fact, I believe you're writing 2 books as we currently speak. Both of them incredibly pertinent to today. I think one is on why young Arab men in particular, exclusively probably, went to Afghanistan. And the other one is looking at Arab policies in counter-terrorism. We certainly look forward to the final copies, and we'll be discussing them in the future, no doubt. But if you would like to just share with us your thoughts on this very important subject. Let's give a round of applause.
Is it working? شكرا والشكر موصول لمنتدى منظمة السلم والشيخ عبد الله الربيع على إتاحة هذه الفرصة لنا جميعا ولي بشكل خاص لنتكلم عن السلام. وللأسف أذكركم بأن موضوع السلام ليس موضوعا يوميا في الإعلام أو في أحاديث الناس، بل نحن مشغولون بما يحصل من صراعات، سواء كانت على مستوى إقليمي أو على مستوى دولي كما هو اليوم بالنسبة إلى حرب أوكرانيا. عندما تكون الحروب أو الصراعات على هذا المستوى بين الدول الكبرى لا يعود هناك ذكر للسلام، وبالتالي مثل هذا المنتدى له دور كبير ومستمر، ولابد من الإصرار عليه، لابد من الإصرار على قيم السلام بين الشعوب وبين الأديان. لكن ككل مراقب، وأنا كصحفي مراقب، كل مراقب يحب أن يرى مثل هذه الثقافة التي نعيش فيها داخل هذه القاعة تتعمم أكثر، تنتشر أكثر. ليس فقط على مستوى الشعوب ومستوى المجتمعات، لكن أيضا لماذا لا تكون أيضا على مستوى الدول؟ في السنوات القليلة الماضية عشنا كابوس الإرهاب عندما كان في ذروته، وهو لا يزال حتى الآن ماثلا. لكن عندما تتطرف الدول نفسها، من يمكن أن يعالج مثل هذه المشكلة؟ مشكلة داعش أو القاعدة أو أي مجموعات إرهابية وجهت بتحالف دولي، وجهت بأكثر من وسيلة معظمها عسكري وأمني. لكن عندما تتطرف الدول نفسها وتذهب إلى مثل هذا الصراع الذي نعيشه حاليا، فالتساؤل هو هل هي المؤسسة الدينية هنا وهناك؟ هل هي مؤسسات السلام التي ترأسها السيدة العزيزة ليز جراندي؟ من؟ ولذلك أنا مسرورا جدا عندما سمعت اقتراح السيدة جراندي بالنسبة إلى الشراكة الوسيطة، لأن هذا ما نفتقده حاليا. من هي مجموعة الدول التي يمكن أن تؤثر على روسيا والولايات المتحدة والدول الأوروبية والصين لكي تجنح إلى السلام؟ كيف وبأي وسيلة؟ ومن هي هذه الدول التي تستطيع أو المؤسسات التي تستطيع أن تقوم بذلك؟ العالم بحاجة فعلا إلى هذا الدور الوسيط الذي يجب أن لا يغيب إطلاقا. فبالتالي إذا كان موضوعنا هو النظام الدولي الجديد والتحديات الأمنية، فنحن أمام أكبر تحدي. أصبح الحديث، مجرد الحديث عن استخدام السلاح النووي شيئا عديد، وتحدد فيه أنواع الأسلحة النووية التي يمكن أو لا يمكن أن تستخدم. إذا دخلنا في مرحلة نحن ذاهبون إلى السماح، إلى التعايش، إلى قبول مثل هذا التحدي الكبير الذي فيه إفناء للبشر. فيجب التحرك بسرعة وبسرعة كبيرة وبمسؤولية كبيرة. أنا أعتقد بأن أكبر تحدي حاليا عدم موضوع الرعب الذي يثيره السلاح النووي. أكبر تحدي هو أن تصل الأزمة الدولية أو الأزمات الدولية إلى تهديد غذاء البشر، أو حتى تهديد البشر في إمكانية تسيير حياتهم من خلال تنقل، من خلال استخدام الطاقة. هذا أعتبره من أكبر التحديات حقيقة، من أكبر التحديات الأمنية، لأنها ستثير الكثير من الأزمات، من الصراعات التي يمكن أن تتفجر بشكل أمني هنا وهناك، على مستوى اجتماعي، على مستوى يعني خلافات داخلية داخل كل بلد تنعكس على مثل هذه الأزمات. وبالتالي لا أحد يفكر تماما في تداعيات الأزمة الغذائية، ولا أحد يفكر على مستوى دولي. ربما هنا نحن مهمومون بهذه الأزمات، لكن من هو صاحب السلطة لكي يعالج، لكي يخفف من إمكانية التفجيرات الاجتماعية التي يمكن أن تحدثها هذه الأزمة؟ أيضا لا أريد أن أذكر بأنه الحروب الصغيرة هي التي أيضا تصنع الحروب الكبيرة. وبالتالي كم أهملنا النزاعات الإقليمية وتركناها تتمادى وتتفجر ومن دون أي علاج حقيقي. عند العرب 4 دول مهزومة أو ربما 5، وهناك مشكلة مزمنة لم يصل إلى حلها بعد. أنا أعتقد بأن تحالف الأديان أو تفاهم الأديان الذي يحدث بالنسبة لهذا اللقاء وغيره الكثير لابد أن يؤثر بشكل أو بآخر في حل القضية الفلسطينية، لأنها ليست فقط قضية شعب، وليست فقط قضية يعني الشعب اليهودي الذي يريد أن يجد وطنه موعود، إنها قضية حقوق الإنسان بكل جوهر، بكل جوهر حقوق الإنسان. وهذا ما عاشه العالم العربي طوال هذه العقود، لكن لا أحد التفت إلى أن العرب في داخلهم في وجدانهم يعانون من هذه القضية، حتى ولو لم يسموها حقوق الإنسان، حتى لو لم يسموها، لكن كل عربي في قرارة نفسه يقول إذا وقع هذا الظلم من إسرائيل فمن الطبيعي أن يقع الظلم علي من أبناء بلدي أيضا. وبالتالي هناك شيء انتشر في هذه المنطقة وصنع لها مستقبلا سيئا نعيشه الآن. لابد من تغيير هذا المستقبل، وأعتقد أن المؤسسات هذه لابد أن تكون لها مساهمة، لابد أن تنعكس بالأخص على سياسات إسرائيل ولعل اتفاقات السلام التي قامتها الإمارات والبحرين والدول الأخرى يعني تعطي الإسرائيليين فكرة جديدة عن أنفسهم، عن دورهم، عن ما يجب أن تكون سياساتهم في المستقبل. هذه القضية إذا تم حلها بمساهمة من مؤسسات مثل منتدى غلوباليزد هذه سيكون إنجازا تاريخيا للمنطقة وللعالم. وشكرا.
Last but by no means least, on my left, probably not politically, physically, we can debate about that later. My old and dear friend, who has had numerous very, very important work. His last one before the current one he's engaged in was actually the UN's Special Envoy on Genocide, where he did a magnificent job in an almost impossible role. We had the honour of listening to in the UK Parliament just a couple of years ago, and we can still remember your input there. You made quite an impact. Currently, he's president of the Pan-African Alliance on Transparency and the Rule of Law, which he thinks, and I agree, are critical areas for Africa to develop, but actually practically anywhere to develop. We've got to remember, these are no longer, can no longer be stereotyped as developing world challenges. As we've seen in the US, the January the 6th insurrection, we've seen madness in the UK, developing for us all. So the world has changed. I think this introduction is kind of alluding to that it isn't as simple as it used to be, or as we used to think it was. It's extremely, extremely complex. So I'd love you to share with us your pearls of wisdom on this incredibly important issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brother. He's trying to warn me, but I think I'm already hinted by what I have listened from my professors, and particularly the powerful keynote address delivered by a long-time friend, former President, His Prime Minister, am this morning to, after COVID, come again to the Forum of Africa Peace. And to start by saying that partnership is the new leadership. Partnership is a responsibility, and I think Sheikh Abdallah bin Bayyah has understood that long before. Indeed, the United Nations owes to Sheikh Abdallah bin Bayyah a plan of action for religious leaders, prevent incitement, violence that could lead to atrocity crimes. As you may know, this plan known as the first plan of action was made possible thanks to not only the financial support of Sheikh Abdallah bin Bayyah, but also for enabling me in my then position as the General Charter of Prevention of Genocide, and to connect with religious leaders throughout the world. And today, the team of this ninth assembly demonstrate also a vision of sharing. Because if you start from the first assembly until today, you will realize that finally the quest for peace is not limited to a particular group of societies or nations. Rather, it is a quest for anti-humanity. And in other words, peace is a concept that transcends all borders of heritage, religion, or culture. And I think no one better than Sheikh has shown clearly when a few years ago he was addressing American citizens, and I think those words can apply, as a matter of fact, to all peoples around the world. And I quote him, we need to build on our shared values, because every time we build on something that we share with the general society, we build a lasting peace and a lasting sort of strong civic involvement between all of us. Every time we focus more on preserving our specific identity than the general identity, then that's where we have the tension. And I think this statement of the Sheikh applies, as I said, not only to the Americans, but to all human beings. It shows that the most serious threat to our humanity is not what Huntington theorized under so-called clashes of civilization, but rather what I call the clashes of ignorance. Had we listened to the voice of Sheikh Abdallah bin Bayyah, which echoes the African philosophy of Ubuntu, that places emphasis on being self through others, we would have succeeded, I'm sure you would agree with me, to reduce drastically the tension we are facing in this world. And today, we are haunted by the turn of events in Ukraine, as all the speakers highlighted, with these senseless killings, executions, beheadings, rape, burning of defenseless victims' mass graves, and with streets littered with corpses and shocking images of the future and elsewhere. And it is no longer a war, it is a butcher. And already at the very beginning of the conflict, I feel it, the deep implication of the before and after of the war in Ukraine. Just as the leader of that time remained tormented to this day by the historical failure and implication of the before and after of the events in Bosnia and Rwanda. The madness of ongoing events in Ukraine raise fears that we get too closer to an even greater horror. And that's why I think the 9th Assembly of the Abu Dhabi Forum for Peace is taking place at a time when multilateralism is on the severe strain. While the conflict of Ukraine has once more demonstrated the perils of great power competition and the resulting consequences around the world, from Syria to Iraq, to Yemen, Afghanistan, to Libya, and many others, whose consequences and suffering caused on the people of these countries are no less than those in Ukraine. The ongoing devastation in the Sahel region, which continues to cause massive displacement and suffering of millions, is also a reminder, if we need any, that simply interdicting refugees in the Mediterranean Sea and elsewhere won't work, and it has not worked before. So the devastating impact of COVID, as we were reminded yesterday by Sheikh has shown definitely that the world of the privilege has shifted to Zoom online mode, a luxury, of course, which millions around the world could not afford. So the consequences of climate change are real. The ongoing drought in the whole of Somalia, in particular, massive heat waves in Europe, flooding in different parts of the world, as we have seen in Pakistan, while the suffering of might be different from the rich and the poor. Without urgent action, consequences of climate change will impact on us all. So all these challenges, of course, while may seem unsurmountable, all they have in common is that humanity has found failed to live up to the promise of the United Nations Charter, a document that was founded on a call for solidarity and collaboration in addressing challenges facing our common humanity. But how to address what I call big picture issue? The UN Charter remains our realistic goal to address these challenges. Indeed, humanity is never short of institutional and policy framework to address these issues. It is simply lack of political will. And my appeal to the big powers, they have to work to talk. They cannot ask others to follow international rule of law for respect the UN Charter when they don't do so themselves, or they do it when it is convenient to them or their national interest. Human rights matter to all, and irrespective of one's color, social status, or any other identifying element, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights remains our bedrock in recognizing and fulfilling our obligation toward each other as a human family. We cannot consistently condemn human rights violations when they are committed by our own detractors, but remain silent when the culprits are those who share our interests. But again, let's be careful. We cannot simply elevate local or national values and interests and cast them as universally shared values. As a human family, we need a candid conversation so that we don't sacrifice the good in pursuit of losing best. And and we have seen some attack against human rights. Norms and values which were considered as a fait accompli are now being challenged, contested. You have seen it following the early days of the crisis in Ukraine, when you had two types of human beings, one side the European, the other side the non-European. So it was a selective process of accepting people who were fleeing out of Ukraine to avoid being killed. So I will end with this word to simply say that most of today's conflict are in two countries. But truth is, impacts are felt even in developed and future countries. We need therefore sustainable and human solutions to these challenges. For example, simply blocking asylum seekers at high sea is not a solution to this inhuman experience. And that's where I think the quote made yesterday by Sheikh Abdullah Bey, that in all religious leaders, in every single country, right and peace, the message devoted to peace is one thing. But I will go further to recommend that from this capital, Abu Dhabi, we managed to start a strong movement like the one we were part of those days to call for the end of the war in Vietnam. I would like that this message of peace, which Abdullah bin Bayah is proposing, be the beginning of a starting of a one-day world demonstration by all people around the world, led by religious leaders, faith leaders, and we have our sister Azakaram, Religion for Peace, who can lead that effort, because we have to show the world leaders that we are fed up with this ongoing war. We are fed up with the injustice going on. We want this world to change. We want back our humanity. I thank you once again, my dear brother, and I call for action. Enough of words. Let's act. Let's get the people to stand up, to demonstrate just for peace, for all, in all countries around the world. Because we see the impact of the war in Ukraine today in our respective countries, in Africa particularly, where people, they are facing them because of the difficulties created by this war. So let's translate the message of shame into action. I thank you.
Perhaps we'll have a quick bit of dialogue here, then we'll hopefully get some questions in. Just actually want to acknowledge Sheikh Hamza there. It's always a pleasure to be in his presence. To my mind, the most significant and influential scholar that we've produced in the West or in the Muslim minority world. So thank you for being here. Look, I found this fascinating because people are saying the same thing and they're saying different things. And you start to see where some of the fault lines are. You know, I mean, I would ask, I mean, the important question I think is home truths for everybody. Are we big enough to take on these home truths? What are they? And probably, you know, are we big enough to act afterwards? I mean, Adam there has given a call to action. How people act, who will act, how will they act? But also, I think the pendulum has shifted undoubtedly to the east, to the internet, to different laws, and to none of the above. So we're living in a quite a complex world at the moment. But I think I would ask, I mean, just based on what some of the speakers have said, it's clear, and I accept it as well, that we in the West we often speak about values, but then we act with vested interest. And Lise spoke about a number of the international institutions that are there to protect and safeguard and enforce equality, fairness and justice. Quite often we see them being very selective in how they implement this equality, this fairness and this justice. And I think one of the reasons why I think we in the West have lost the kind of influence and to a degree respect perhaps that we had, is that because of education, because of social media, because of the media, because of mass communication, it's no longer possible to get away with saying one thing and doing another. And I think in many ways, these are some of the home truths for us in the West. Equally, I've got to say, there are home truths for people in the East. And I think, Adam, I've just an excellent point at the end. When we speak about universal values, whose values are we speaking about? And can we accommodate people who perhaps don't wholly buy into what we might regard as universal values? And if so, how? So these are just a few things I've thrown out. Obviously, the broad heading for the first one is really kind of the double standards. Anywhere you go in the Muslim world, for sure, you're going to hear double standards, double standards. How do we take this off the table so that we can focus on other things? And it's a huge challenge, but Lise, you started this, so I'm not blaming you, but you started this, and I think you set out brilliantly the kind of infrastructure and architecture that is kind of required moving forward. And I think Adam was alluding to, I think both John and Abdul were talking really about a place where you can have the kind of dialogue. This is one of those unique spaces where you can do that. But how do we practically move forward? I'm sorry, it's not an easy question. Yes, I'm not picking on you.
There we go. I think we're on. I think what was so interesting about the way that many of our colleagues approached the problem was to touch on the lack of confidence that people have in institutions when those institutions are not shown to act on the basis of the values that they support. So when you have institutions that say, we believe in accountability, we believe in cooperation, we perform very differently, which comes no surprise to any of us, that confidence in those institutions declines. Now, one of the hugely important roles that an alliance of faith leaders can provide is to guide those institutions on the kind of behavior which wins the confidence of people. So when we see international courts of justice that selectively apply sanctions against some perpetrators, but not others, when we see courts of justice that single out perpetrators from one country and ignore the atrocities that are committed by people from other parts of the world, of course, people do not have confidence in that. And there is a special role of faith leaders to say to those institutions, this is not acceptable, what you are doing is not right. You must change course and apply equally values to report to everyone. At the moment, that conversation happens not necessarily by faith leaders. It happens primarily from within the institutions. It is clearly not an impactful enough conversation. And it can be a role that forms the life, the Abu Dhabi Peace Party, other forms and networks of religious leaders who do to great effect.
Just really briefly building on that, there is there's a strong old-fashioned classical Western liberalism which saw religion as part of the problem and something which would naturally wither away as societies advanced, and religion was what drove extremism end up in that situation with a value system which isn't actually connected within the communities in which it needs to serve. And so, again, really back to why what you are doing in your communities here and what the leadership of this forum is trying to bring together is, yes, absolutely challenges. It is full of faithful challenging situations, but also can properly embed the values of peaceful coexistence and root them within the communities, which is ultimately the only way in which you are effectively going to challenge that extremism, whether it comes from a distortion of faith, which is what the scholarship environment has set his life against in the Islamic Muslim, or it comes from that extreme version of anti-religious statism, which you are seeing in China with and potentially parts of the world with this suppression of religion. But it shows the importance of vibrant faith in community.
I just got a message from the organisers. They said you've got 2 more hours, is that right? As ever, we started 40 minutes late, but we've got to finish on time. But that's never going to happen while I'm chairing, so it's going to be 5 or 10 minutes over, for sure. I'm a very poor chair. What I want to do is actually just allow 2 questions to come in. If there are 2 people who have a question, we'd love to hear it, and then perhaps we'll, if you can identify one person on the panel for the sake of time who you want to answer that question, that would be helpful. Do we have any questions? We've got the gentleman on my right. You got any ladies anywhere who wish to ask in the interest of balance? No? Okay, so we've got the gentleman on the right, and who else had their hand up? Okay, we've got 2 here, 3 apart. Yeah, got you. So if you want to just, I'm not sure if you can get a mic or not. I'm sure your voice will land here one way or another.
وشكر خاص لمعالي الوزير على هذه الإدارة الشفافة في هذه الجلسة، وشكر الوصول لكل زملائه الكرام على هذا
الثلاثة اللي على اليمين
مدير مركز تعزيز الوسطية لمجلس الوزراء بدولة الكويت، وهو المركز المعني والمختص بمحاربة الفكر المتطرف والإرهاب. حقيقة أريد فقط أن أثني على سؤال معالي الوزير للأخت الكريمة من جهة الشفافية في التعامل. نحن بكل صراحة نفتقد الثقة في الكثير من المنظمات الدولية والمؤسسات، لأننا لا نجد، وهذا لسان حال الشارع العربي، لا نجد إنصافا في التعامل، ولا نجد التزاما بالمبادئ والقيم التي ينادون بها. ولما سألت الأخت الكريمة عن كيفية تحقيق الثقة، الجواب بسهولة من خلال المصداقية في التعامل. فمن غير المعقول أن يكون التعامل مع مشكلة في الشرق مختلفا عن التعامل مع مشكلة في الغرب، وأن يكون هناك تعامل مزدوج مع اللاجئين أو المشردين بسبب الحروب في الشرق مختلفا عن التعامل مع المشردين أو ضحايا الحروب في الغرب كما نراه واضحا. المرجو من الجميع أن يكون هناك شفافية ووضوح حتى نتمكن نحن من خلال منابرنا أن ندعو الناس للثقة والتعاون مع مثل هذه المؤسسات. شكرا جزيلا على إتاحة الفرصة. والسؤال هو للأخت الكريمة مرة أخرى، هل هي فعلا مقتنعة أو لا ترى هذه الازدواجية في التعامل مع الحروب في الشرق والحروب في الغرب أم لا؟ شكرا جزيلا.
When I worked with the United Nations, Excellency, I served in 12 different wars. If you were a civilian and you were caught in a war that the West didn't care about, you received this much assistance. You received very little chance of being resettled in the place of safety. If you were a civilian caught in a war in a country that was cared about, you received this much assistance. That's what it does. You were welcomed anywhere you wanted to go for safety. His distinction is not lost on anyone. Everyone sees it. Everyone understands that if God has put you on this planet here, God has placed you here, the nations of mankind treat you differently. As faith leaders, we know this is wrong. We know this is not what was intended. And this is why the advocacy faith leaders and calling for moral consistency and the universal application of the same principles is unique, singular, and original.
Thank you. Can I first apologise? Oh, you've got the mic, okay.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أنا المتحدث بروفيسور خدمة الدكتور محمد مدير المركز النيجيري للبحوث العربية. أعتقد هذه نقطتان أساسيتان أتحدث فيهما. النقطة الأولى مسألة الحق. أعتقد أن من الأفضل.
If you just make one point.
No problem. Thank you. أعتقد من الأفضل أن نفكر في الجهات الأخرى التي تعمل في الخفاء لإشعال نار الحرب، وتلك الجهات قوية بل لها نفوذ على صناع القرار السياسي، مثل الشركات الدولية النشاط التي تعمل في مجال صناعة الأسلحة. هذه الجهات هي مثل المتغيرات الوسيطة التي قد لا تظهر كمتغيرات أساسية في العالم. هذه الجهات يجب أن يكون لها أو يكون في خطابنا حضور وتركيز عليها. أما النقطة الثانية بشكل سريع، نريد من العقالة الدينيين أن يقفوا علينا شوية، لأنهم خاصة المؤدلجين الذين يستخدمون الدين والذين كلما حصلت مشكلة إنما هم وراء هذه المشاكل. فقط يجب أننا نتحدث عن هؤلاء أن يرحمونا ويرحموا شعوبنا. والسلام عليكم.
Thank you very much for two very, very pertinent points. I just want to finish by quoting a figure from the civil rights movement in the US, Martin Luther King, who said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And that's as powerful today as it was then. I also want to thank John, who always is so insightful and thoughtful and deep, and we love him dearly and we're pleased that he's here today. Abdul, who obviously has got huge experience just from his contributions. You can see that he was on the streets, he understood the pulse of the people on the streets. Adam, who I think did a brilliant job of forensically identifying some of the key triggers there are huge problems that we have to deal with. These for presenting us with a magnificent framework at the beginning and for our contributions throughout. And of course, all of you for bearing with us. And our two questioners, because I thought both questions were excellent. And I'm sorry we haven't got longer, but I've already got a bad track record for letting these things go on for longer than they should. So I better stop now. Thank you ever so much. A round of applause for the speakers.